Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Vendetta Sports Media's T20 World Cup coverage. I'm Jerry Walker, and alongside me, as always, is Jarrod Prosser. And Jarrod, the Super 12 is now complete. Three of the four teams we kind of could have expected to get through, but there was one shock and a very surprising results on Friday.
Yeah, look, Group One kind of, unfortunately for me, congratulations to you. It went the way we sort of expected, but yeah, Group Two. Look, I got to admit, the last pod I did say that there was a chance that Pakistan could cause an upset here because they're just, you know, could sneak in because they're good enough to beat Bangladesh, but it would rely on the Dutch beating the South Africans, which we thought just wasn't going to happen. And yeah, as it turns out, we've gotten um, we've gotten a monster upset on the last day of action here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a great tournament already and capped off by excitement going up to the very last two matches. It's
Mm.
been a great tournament so far, and I'm excited for the semifinals. But I mean, we'll start with England and Sri Lanka, the last game
Yeah,
of
let's
Group.
get it out of the way.
Yeah, let's get last match of Group One play. Pretty much it was simple. England win the match and they advance to the semifinals. England lose the match and Australia go through. But in the end, England managed to, by the skin of their teeth, pull it out. Won by 4 wickets, 144 for six to 141 for eight. But it came down to the second to last ball for England to get it done. What were your just general reactions to that match at first?
It shouldn't have been that close, quite frankly. You look at the Sri Lankan innings. The English bowling attack is just so good. Their top five bowlers all picked up wickets. Mark Wood, just that raw pace of Mark Wood,
Mm.
went for 3 for 26. He was expensive, which can happen with a guy who hits the pitch that hard. Only bowled the 3 overs for his 26, but picked up three good wickets. And really, the only bat that really stepped up for the Sri Lankans was Nissanka at the top of the innings with 67. Aside from that, it was a pretty tepid batting performance. Mendes had 18 in a 39 run opening partnership. So Sri Lanka did look pretty good at the start, smacking the ball around. But as soon as one wicket went, they just you could just see that the wheels were starting to fall off. The pace, Nissanka aside, the pace went out of the innings. Wickets regularly fell. Rajapaksa had a nice little 22 off even time, but really outside of Nissanka, there just wasn't a whole lot to write home about. And once Nissanka went out, I think he went out in the 16th over.
Yep.
Um, you know, basically, like Sri Lanka just fell in a heap from there. They continued to lose wickets and just couldn't score.
Yeah, the point where he went out, when Nasaka went out in that 16th over, it was 118 for four. And then they ultimately ended with 141 for eight. So dropping wickets very regularly. But you mentioned Mark Wood. He did have those 3 wickets. And he was even part of the rundown of Hasaranga in the last over as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in the final over, he was a part of, he got 2 wickets himself, but also got added a third in that run out. So very
And
impressive
yeah,
performance from him.
and it was Wood who, like, he did his damage in those late overs as well. As much as the innings had kind of died off a little bit after that hot start, Sri Lanka was still in a position where if Rajapaksa and Shanaka, even some of the tail enders, if they'd managed to hit out, Sri Lanka could have been looking at mid 160s.
Mm.
But Wood did his damage in those late overs, picked up the three late wickets, and it just took all the impetus out of what should have been a late innings charge for the Sri Lankans. It was really good death bowling.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, a guy who really haven't seen much of this tournament, I feels like, is Adil Rashid, who
Yeah.
pulled 1 wicket, 16 runs allowed in his 4 overs, and he had a solid performance, as did Sam Curran, who's been outstanding this World Cup. Little more expensive. He was the most expensive English bowler with 27 runs in his 4 overs, but still got a wicket out of it and looked just as good as he has.
Yeah, I feel like we say every innings that Sam Curran's bowled well. He's been
Yeah.
really good this tournament. Rashid, Sri Lankans traditionally play spin pretty well, and Rashid just, he had them in knots. He was very, very tough to get away. 11 dot balls. probably deserved at more than one wicket. But the thing with Rashid is he got the big wicket. He got Nasanka, who was the guy who could have two fours and five sixes. Usually you get that ratio the other way around, but every time Nasanka went big, he went really big. And it was Rashid who eventually got rid of him. And like we were saying, Jerry, that pretty much, that combined with Wood's death bowling pretty much killed the innings dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for England, it was a strong start from Joss Butler and Alex Hales, who, when Butler went out in the eighth over, they were 75 for one. Butler finished 28 from 23 and Hales 47 from 30. But after that, there was really only one player that kind of stood out in England's batting order, and that was Ben Stokes.
Yeah, elevated up the order, Stokes. David Milan was apparently suffering an injury, so they were holding him out as long as possible. And yeah, look, England didn't need to go super quick with the depth they've got in their batting, but Butler and Hales, being Butler and Hales, decided to go hell for leather anyway. And Hales in particular was just electric in this innings. It was almost a shock when he went out. He went out to who else but Hasaranga, but a weird shot. He tried to hoik it over mid wicket, got down on one knee from memory, and it came off like literally the toe of the bat. It came off the bottom of the bat and just spooned back to Hasaranga, and everybody stood around just going, "Oh my god, how did that happen?" Batsmen, bowler, fielders, everyone were in a state of shock for a few seconds. It was a very weird dismissal.
Yeah, he kind of just like nicked it and completely didn't get any good contact on it and just like floated right back to Hasaranga, who,
Yeah. Oh, he clearly got done in flight. He swung way too early. Another he swung another tenth of a second too early, and it's probably going to hit his body or hit the stumps. So yeah, either way, it's good bowling. But yeah, it was just such an unusual dismissal. But you look at you mentioned those three, Butler, Hales, and Stokes, who hit the winning runs, elevated up the order, 42 not out. But my God, the rest of the card, look, there was a massive, massive collapse in the middle of that English innings. Harry Brook went for four, Livingston went for four, Mo and Ali went for one. Sam Curran, who's not expected to make runs, went for six. But yeah, I mean, it almost looked like England were. It felt like they were in control the whole time, but that that control was slipping as those wickets fell pretty quickly.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned Sam Curran's batting, and he kind of impressed me a little bit in his at bats because he was just playing as the partner to, as all of them were, to Ben Stokes.
Yeah.
And Curran, who you know much more as a bowler than a batter, did what he needed to do to just get ones and get Ben Stokes back on the bat, and
Yeah.
kind of did what he had to do, as did all of them. And Chris Wokes came in at the end and helped seal the deal, but it was really just those top three for England that won them this inning.
Yeah, yeah. And look, Stokes is a clutch player. Like he is a man for the big occasion, and he's proven that in Test matches, in one day internationals. He's a guy. Excuse me. He's a guy with the ball, but especially with the bat, who steps up. And he did it again here with Milan ailing. Stokes went up from usually bats at five or six, stepped up to first drop, and yeah, batted superbly. As the innings started to disintegrate around him, he was the one guy, as always, who kept his head.
Yeah, I feel like if Stokes had gotten out at all, it would have been quick work for the rest of the English order, and it would have been
Yeah,
trouble, and we would be talking about Australia in the semifinal right now.
yeah, it could have been dicey. It really could have been dicey. But Stokes is arguably the best all rounder in world cricket in overall when you take in all forms of the game. So this is why you have superstars in your side, because they step up in big moments. And Stokes, not for the first time, stepped up.
Yeah, and I mean, we're looking at the Sri Lankan bowling. As always, Hasaranga leads the way. He got two wickets. He retired both Butler and Hales, and ended up 2 for 22 for 23 in his four overs. But there were two other bowlers who got two wickets each, Lahiru Kumara and then Dejana De Silva. But
Yeah,
after that, I mean, Kasan Raji gave up 40 runs in his three overs. So,
yeah, he was tonked. He was really tonked.
yeah.
Thikshana was good at the top. He bowled well without luck, but yeah, he was the one guy who seemed to have the measure of Hales and Butler, but yeah, Rajitha, like the openers just took to him.
Yeah,
He got the big stick.
very unfortunate for him. But now with that win, England moves on to the semifinals. Sri Lanka finishes fourth in Group One, and they're heading home. But now let's get into the craziest result.
Just before we do that, it's we should mention with Sri Lanka, to gain automatic, we talk about the qualifying rounds that happen before the Super 12s. To make it to get an automatic spot in the Super 12s for the next T20 World Cup, you need to finish in the top four in your group. And Sri Lanka came through the qualifying rounds this time after a horrible World Cup last time around. So for them, finishing top four, that will still be seen as a step forward for Sri Lanka. The fact that they've earned, automatic qualification to the next tournament, Super 12. So, as much as they haven't made the semi-finals and they weren't awesome in this game, this is still a step forward for Sri Lankan cricket. This is a step back to that respectability they had 10 years ago, or even back in the 90s when De Silva and Jaminda Vas and Kulinaratne and all those guys were playing.
Yeah, definitely is a step forward for Sri Lanka. And as you mentioned, will be automatically in the Super 12 in 2 years' time when the T20 World Cup is hosted in the West Indies and in the US, which will be interesting considering the
Yeah.
US, I don't think, has ever competed in any major cricket tournament.
No, I would be shocked if we found more than 100 people who actually knew that the World Cup is coming to
Yeah.
the US, to be frank with you, Jerry.
No,
So
that's very,
it's pretty
very
much
fair.
you and whoever you've told. So,
Exactly. But let's hop into the last days of Group Two action and start it out. The situation is South Africa win, they're in. India win, they're in. The winner of Pakistan Bangladesh would have a chance potentially more Pakistan if results around in one of those two other big dogs lost. And sure enough, in the first match, the Netherlands versus South Africa, somehow the Ricky Dicky Dutch got it done, won by 13 runs, 158 for 4 to 145 for 8. And I see you just scratching your head, shaking your head. What are your thoughts on that match?
I'd like to give my match report on the South African team via the medium of interpretive dance.
Yep, that sums it up
That's
right
it. We're on to
there.
the next match now. That's pretty much it. So
Exactly.
just
No,
like I have, we talked about England. They still had to play Sri Lanka, who are a good test playing nation. The Dutch are minnows, like dead set minnows. One of their best players is a 37-year-old guy who played like a handful of internationals for Sri Lanka about 15 years ago. In oh god, I had it on the tip of my tongue because he took that ridiculous catch.
oh,
Roloff van der Merwe,
yeah.
that's it. Yeah, we'll get to that actually. The catch he took
Oh,
to get rid of David
beautiful.
Miller was just like sublime, one of the best
Yeah.
catches of the tournament. But yeah, I mean, this is a side who they take state level players, like first class cricket players from England, from Holland, from Australia, from New Zealand, just to make a national team. There's very few literal Dutch players in this team. And like for them just to get a win, which they did earlier in the tournament at Super 12 level, is an achievement. For them to finish with taking on one of their old one of their old colonies in South Africa and a powerhouse at that, and knock them off when South Africa had everything to play for, and put themselves in the top four. They're an automatic qualifier for the next World Cup now. This is a momentous day for Dutch cricket. This is beyond huge for the Dutch.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest and most historic day in Dutch cricketing history.
Oh God, yeah,
But I mean,
yeah,
it started early and often. I mean, Stefan Maibo, 37 runs from 30 as the opener, 7 boundaries, no sixes, but him and Max O'Dowd got off to on the right foot, going partnering for 58 runs before Maibo went out. But it was just those top four of him, O'Dowd, Tom Cooper, and Colin Ackerman that just kind of set the tone and took over for the Dutch.
yeah. Well, you look at this scorecard. I mean, 158 for four off 20 overs is a pretty good score, but everyone contributed. As you mentioned, Myberg 37, O'Dowd 29, Cooper 35, Ackerman a brilliant 41 off 26. Even Edwards 12 off 7 late. The only guy who didn't get a start was Basteleda, who went out for one, like clean bowled by Nortje. There were no passengers in this batting card. Having said that, massively, massively disappointed with the South African bowling. They just looked like, I won't say they didn't want to be there, but it looked like they thought they had it won the moment they set foot on the park.
Yeah. Yeah, they were a little too complacent, and it sure enough came back to bite them, especially those first three bowlers, Wayne Parnell, Kagiso Rabada, and Lungi Ngidi.
Yeah,
All,
Ngidi.
all
Yeah,
had
he's
no
a
wicket.
quick bowler and he's a guy that can really intimidate. But like these are, you know, most of these Dutch players, when they're not playing cricket, they go work 9 to 5
Yeah.
jobs. And they were handling this guy, a legitimate test match level bowler, professional bowler. They were handling like it was just Sunday at the park. It was remarkable to watch.
Yeah, each one of those bowlers gave up 30 or more runs. Parnell finished 32, no wickets in his four overs. Rabada 37 and Njidi 35. But I mean, with that being said, Unrich Nordy had another great match. Got his one wicket, gave up only 10 runs in his four overs, but it just wasn't enough. Those top three kind of just let them down completely.
Yeah, you're right. I should have mentioned Nortje. He bowled with fire. He was the one guy who perhaps he could see the complacency in amongst his teammates and amongst the group, and he was almost like raging against the dying of the light. He was the one guy who seemed to be really fired up and understand the gravity of the situation. And the shame of that is that okay, you didn't bowl well outside of Nortje and you've given up 158. But for a batting lineup as good as South Africa's against a pretty, bang average bowling attack from the Dutch, you would still expect South Africa to run that down pretty easily.
Yeah.
But you run through that South African card. You look at their top six. Every single one of them hit double figures. The lowest was Quinton de Kock with 13, and three of them, including Bavuma and Russo, who were explosive, they made it to their 20s, but no one went on with it. It wasn't like the Dutch blew through this South African innings. Every South African, recognised batsman had a chance to score a match winning innings, and none of them just seemed to want it. It was whether it was concentration issues or what, I don't know, but you know. This wasn't like the pitch was playing badly. This was just South Africa batted badly.
Yeah, and I mean, you gotta give a little bit of credit to the Dutch bowling. Fred Klaassen, 2 wickets for 20 runs in his four. Brandon Glover, only bowled two overs, but got 3 wickets in that, including two in the 16th over, and gave
Yeah,
up 9 runs. And then Basteleda, 2 wickets, 25 runs in his 3 overs. But again, it was just,
yeah,
it seemed like South Africa always was going to be able to push on, but those batters just never quite crossed over and continued it.
yeah. Credit to Delata who picked up a couple late when South Africa, started to panic a little bit.
Mm.
We mentioned at the start, Vandermeer was catching the outfield off Miller, who, left hand bat, he hooked the ball and just skied a complete top edge, and running from sort of a leg gully square leg type of position. The old fella Vandermeer, he chased it down, diving to his left as he sort of misjudged the ball slightly, held onto it. Just a stunning catch. One thing to point out with the Dutch batting, and it's something I've only just realised as I'm looking at the scorecard right now, and I should have, perhaps in retrospect, half recognised it when the match was on, but it didn't quite click. None outside of Aiden Markham, and he was only 17 off 13, so it wasn't like he was miles ahead of runs to balls. None of them were really hitting the scoring with any pace. That was indicative of the attitude from the majority of the South African side pretty much all day. There was just no urgency.
No, I mean, you mentioned Aiden Markham, and he was 17 off 13. But the only other one that really took advantage of it was Riley Rousseau, who got 25 off 19. But just Otherwise,
That's not even all that quick for
yeah,
Rousseau.
no,
He's a
no,
very, very fast
exactly.
scorer.
I mean, we've seen Quinton de Noc go off in this tournament. He was 13 for 13. Temba Bavuma, who had an amazing last match,
Yeah,
went 20 for 20 and kind of just, like you said, no urgency. They kind of were just complacent, just going through the motions almost like, oh, we'll be fine. We'll just end up hitting a couple sixes, fours, and get on our way. But it never
yeah.
came.
I think there was a little bit of, that the I'm Keith Hernandez thing. We're South Africa. This is Holland we're playing. We're going to win this. It'll all turn out in the end. But, you know, T20 cricket, it's a short game. It's got lots of variances in it. And if you don't take it seriously, as we've just seen, you can get beaten by a side that you shouldn't get beaten by. South
Absolutely.
Africa should be in the semi-finals and they've only got themselves to blame.
Yep. And as you said, they should be, but they aren't. And it ended up being the winner of Bangladesh and Pakistan that were going to get that next second semifinal spot because with South Africa's loss, India clinched a place in the semifinal. Not necessarily as the group winners yet, because Pakistan could still jump them on the run rate. Bangladesh would have needed a massive win to do that. But
Yeah.
Pakistan ultimately won by 5 wickets, 128 for 5 to 127 for 8. And that was a relatively close match up until the very end. But we'll start with the Bangladesh batting order. What did your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I personally, I don't think it was super, super close, this one. It felt like Pakistan always had an extra gear in them.
Mm.
Um, I thought, Shanto, not for the first time, was really good up the top of the order. Bowled by Ahmed for 54 after trying to push the pace a little. There were a few starts here. Litton Das looked good until he got cleaned up by Shaheen Afridi, who picked up 4 wickets. Shaheen Afridi he was magnificent
Oh,
as a
wow.
bowler. Saka had 20 coming in at first drop. Asif Hussain, 24, coming in at fifth in the order, but the poor bloke just couldn't get the strike. He was batting all right, but if he just couldn't maintain the strike. He always seemed to be up the non-strikers end, which certainly didn't help the Bangladeshis. And a score of 127. Pakistan. I feel like we mention this every pod, but they can shoot themselves in the foot. But all things being equal, 127 isn't a tough total for them to chase. I mentioned Afridi 4 for 22. He was electric in this one, and he's someone who has seemed to warm into the tournament. He's gotten better as it's gone on. Um, a few other good performances there. Shadab Khan picked up 2 wickets, but I was actually more impressed with Harris Ralph 1 for 21. But as he does, bowls with a lot of fire, a lot of pace, a lot of bounce. He's a very aggressive bowler. Um, and he can go for runs because of that, but he didn't today. He probably deserved better figures than 1 for 21. I thought he was very good.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned a little bit ago Shanto and Sarkar for the Bangladesh bowling. I'll hop or batting. I'll hop into the Pakistan bowling in a second. But those two combined for over 50 runs in their partnership for the first time this tournament. So it was actually a reasonable start for them. But you mentioned Afridi, and he was solid as always. Shabad Khan, 2 wickets for 30 runs, though, in his 4 overs. But both Afridi and Khan, they took multiple wickets in and over. Afridi in the 17th over kind of ended the Bangladesh hopes, and Khan, two in the 11th over. But
Yeah, and it was just if you have a look at the worm graph for the Bangladeshis, that was there was a little bit of a lull after those double wicket overs, which is understandable. But every time that happened, it just took a little bit of impetus out of the innings. And aside from a nice little blast at the end, I suppose, from Hussain and Nasum Ahmed had a nice boundary as well. Overs, I guess, 16 to about 19, which is when you really should be accelerating. The Bangladeshis almost seem to have the handbrake on. If they decided to hit out a little bit, maybe they could have had 140 and really made a match of this 150. But ultimately, those late overs just really hurt.
yeah, and I mean, as far as Pakistan's inning went, They were 56 for no outs at the halfway point through 10 overs. And Rizwan and Baba Arzam opened that up, and it was 32 from 32 for Rizwan, and Azam went 25 from 33. But it was still nothing special. 56 runs through 60 balls.
Yeah, look, I think this was one where Pakistan paced themselves a little bit. Rizwan 32 in even time, Babar Azam 25 of 33, as you said. Muhammad Harris, the youngster, he batted at number 4 and hit another really good 31 off 18. And Shan Masood 24 of 14 late as Pakistan had to accelerate. They were probably a little bit too cautious. Um, Credit to Litton Das, in the field for Bangladesh, ran out Muhammad Nawaz with a brilliant direct hit for 4. But yeah, I mean, this one was relatively close on paper, but I kind of felt like Pakistan always had a gear in them, and late on Muhammad Harris, Shan Masood, they did step up when the run rate needed to be accelerated. But Rizwan and Azam gave them a nice solid start to build on, chasing a relatively small total.
Yeah, you mentioned Mohammad Harris, and he came up really big in that 16th over where Pakistan ended up getting 16 runs, and there was a no ball, which Pakistan is very, very familiar with after their match against India. And Harris drove it for 6, and kind of really at that point, you knew Pakistan's going to find a way to win this. And they ended up winning with, what was it, in the 19th over with 10 balls left, I
Yeah,
believe.
10 or 11 balls to go.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
rather.
pretty comfortable in the end.
And that means that win puts Pakistan into the semifinal against the Kiwis. And Bangladesh ended up falling down to 5th place in Group 2 behind the Dutch. So be interesting to see them in the play-in tour or in the first round in the next World Cup.
Yeah, again, I'm stunned at that South Africa
Yeah,
holiday,
it's
Jerry. I'm still reeling a bit from that. I mean, I'm thrilled. I was so happy for the Dutch, but it was just so unexpected,
really,
both the result and the way it happened.
it really was. And now I think let's hop into the fourth and final match and the last match of the Super 12, the first one back at Melbourne, and fortunately no rain for once, which was nice. But
Oh, I can tell you, like I'm an hour west from Melbourne, so I can tell you, whilst I was watching that match, the rain was coming down. It stopped now,
oh, okay.
but yeah, the people leaving the MCG, I reckon about probably 10, 20 minutes after the match ended, they would have been walking in the rain.
Ah, but this was
So
by
the timing was just right.
yes, it was then. But this was by far the most straightforward and as expected match. India versus Zimbabwe. It was an annihilation by India. Won by 71 runs, 186 for 5 to Zimbabwe's 115 all out. And I mean, India just went off from the start. KL Rahul, 51 from 35, 3 boundaries, 3 sixes. Virat Kohli, 26 from 25. But it was really Surya Kumar Yadav who took over and carried that Indian team a lot.
Oh, he was explosive. 61 off 25. Like that's an insane scoring rate. 6 boundaries, 4 sixes. Yeah, he picked up where KL Rahul, where Virat, even Rohit, the veteran.
Mm.
He was looking really good until he smacked it right down Mazakadz's throat at deep square leg. Yeah, look, India, I think they played with the freedom knowing that no matter what, they were in the semi-finals.
Yeah.
So it was a case of, look, let's go out and let's just have a bit of fun with this. Let's go out and play, try and get this done early. And if it all goes belly up, then we're still in the semi-final anyway, and we've got New Zealand, so which is probably a better matchup for them. So whatever happened, they were going to come out of this well. Even Hardik Pandya late, 18 off 18 before
Mm.
falling second or third last ball. Oh, there we go, fifth last ball. But yeah, look, everyone batted well in that top 4. Even Rispar Pant was looking good. He smacked one straight down. Well, I shouldn't say straight down because Ryan Bell took just a ripping catch to get rid of him. But it's good to see Rispar Pant in the lineup, actually. I'm surprised India haven't played him to this point. Really good explosive hitter, and not the best keeper, but developing. But like any good keeper, never shuts up. So chatty behind the stumps. I think he's a good addition to this 11.
No, absolutely. I mean, unfortunate he was out on a great catch by Burrow, but ended up 3 for 5. And as far as the Zimbabwe bowling went, top three guys, Richard Ngrava, Tende Chatara, and Blessing Muzarabani, not good at all. But that's more, I would say, credit to the Indian batting. But Ngrava, 44 runs, got 1 wicket. Chatara, 34, no wickets. And Muzarabani gave up 50 runs on his 1 wicket.
And that 1 wicket was fairly lucky. That like the wicket he got was the first one in the innings when Sharma and like Sharma got all of it, absolutely
Mm.
all of it. He could have rolled the wrists and hit it down to the fielder. He probably could have even hit it harder and hit it over the fielder, but in the end he picked him out, and it was almost a lucky wicket.
Yeah.
I've been so big on blessing Mizurabani this tournament. Frankly, all of that, those young quicks for Zimbabwe, but Chatara, who didn't take a wicket but only went for 34, he was probably the only one that could come out of this at least with a little bit of pride in his bowling effort for this match. But Garava got carded. Muzarabani, like he was a shell of himself. This was not the bowler we've seen in the rest of the tournament. He's only 22. The end of a tournament, maybe he just, knowing that they weren't going to make the semi-finals, maybe he just let himself slip a bit mentally. But man, you do that against a side like India, and you end up with 1 for 50.
Yeah, the only two guys on the bowling side that really at least stood out to me a lot, as always, Sikandar Raza. He had 1 wicket for 18 in his 3 overs, but Sean Williams, 2 wickets in his 2 overs, allowing just 9 runs. And they
Yeah,
both had a pretty decent bowling attack.
yeah. And look, Sean Williams is a batsman. He's a break glass in case of emergency bowler. But he took the pace off the ball. He varied his deliveries. Um, and it's probably just the fact that he doesn't bowl that often. The Indians probably haven't really scouted him that much, to
Oh,
be honest.
yeah.
But and look, one of his wickets came from that ridiculous Burl catch in the outfield, diving full length Superman style. So a lesser fielder, probably drops that, and he's got 1 for 9, which is, or, maybe 1 for 10 or 11 with the runs they would have taken. Still good work for 2 overs, but yeah, look, it was almost the exception that proved the rule as far as India dominating their batting.
Yeah, and I mean Zimbabwe's batting off to a rough start from the get-go. First ball, Wesley Madhaver out,
A
caught
good
by
catch by
yeah,
Kohli too. Like Mataveri got all of that one. A beautiful cover drive, and Kohli got down low. It was a nice catch.
and then his replacement, first one in, Regis Chakabra, out for no runs as well in the second
Man,
over. And
but that delivery that got him, Arshdeep Singh, I've been
mm,
massively
yeah,
impressed with him
he's being
this
very
tournament. And
good.
to be honest, Jerry, we've spoken, even going back to the preview pod, we've spoken about Jasprit Bumrah, who is the best Indian quick, and probably the best Indian quick for quite a while, to be
Mm.
honest. Him not being at the tournament because of injury, if he's not injured, I reckon it's probably Arshdeep Singh that doesn't play. And right now, I reckon Arshdeep Singh is actually the most important bowler in this Indian lineup. He swings the ball both ways. He swings it prodigiously. He swings it late. For anyone that hasn't watched this match, the India Zimbabwe one, go back and watch the delivery that gets Regis Chakabva. God, it's late over here.
No.
Um, like it would have gotten any batsman in world cricket. It was an absolute gem of a ball.
Yeah, we're running a little short on time on this one, so we'll kind of just speed through the rest of the Zimbabwe inning. Only two guys that really stood out, Sikandar
Yeah,
Raza and Ryan Burrell. Raza, 34 from 24, 3 4s, no sixes. Ryan Burrell, 35 from 22 with 5 boundaries and 1 6.
yeah,
But it was kind of too little too late, not enough around him to do much damage to
yeah,
get
yeah.
185.
Look, they,
Yeah.
after that awful start, someone needed to step up, and Burl and Raza, they didn't so much get Zimbabwe back into the match, but they added some respectability to the scoreboard. If either of those two go out early, in their teens or
Oh,
something like that, there's a chance that the whole batting card collapses around them, and we're looking at a 100-run win. But those two really like they fought a losing battle. The two of them. They batted well, but they were the only two that stood up.
yeah, it was. I mean, we mentioned as far as India's bowling, Arshdeep Singh, who got his one wicket from for 9 runs in his 2 overs, but it was Ashwin who 3 wickets in for 22 in his 4 overs,
Yeah,
as well as Hardik
yeah,
Pandya.
yeah,
He
yep.
had 2 wickets for 16 in his 3 overs, but it's just
Yeah. Look,
a skill
oh,
level difference between the two teams was on note today.
oh, yeah, it was a massive talent difference, and one team was on, one team was off. Ashwin can be hit or miss with his bowling, but he was very, very good today. I still am struggling to see the point of Axar Patel, the bowling all rounder for India, another spinner. He got carded. He got the final wicket, but 1 for 40 off 3.2 overs. I'm just not sure if he's placed in this side. I honestly reckon you could find someone who can bat better than him and can do the similar job with the ball because the job he's doing is great.
Yeah, and with that, that's the conclusion of the Super 12. India moves on to the semifinal where they'll be playing England, and Zimbabwe is going home. And
Yeah,
they were one of the more entertaining teams to watch the most of this tournament, but now sit at the very bottom of Group 2, which we'll get into these final tables, what the final results are in that. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with you guys. Welcome back, guys. We are ready to get into the final standings of the 2 groups, as well as preview the upcoming semifinals a little bit. Well, we'll start with Group 1. 3 teams tied atop on points with 7: New Zealand, England, and Australia. Yet it was that net run rate that really was the difference. And it was all kind of from that first match between New Zealand and Australia. Don't need to remind you any more than you know, shaking your head already. But New Zealand won the group. England finished second. Australia third. Sri Lanka finished fourth with 4 points. Ireland fifth with 3. And Afghanistan finished at the bottom with 2. Is this kind of what you expected out of this group, or were you expecting different results around?
Look, the top three and the bottom three were what I expected as far as this is how they would group up. I kind of expected it to go 4, 5, 6 as Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
So a bit disappointing for the Afghanis. But having said that, they did have 2 matches washed out as well. So that's not exactly ideal for them. The Irish, good on them for taking down England, which is their World Cup final. As we mentioned before, Sri Lanka finishing top 4, that puts them back in the automatic qualification for the next tournament, which after a few lean years, it's a good thing for them. Australia, England, New Zealand, all very good sides as evidenced by their identical records: 3 wins, 1 loss, 1 no result. But as you mentioned, Jerry, that first match for Australia where they got tonked by the Kiwis ultimately did them in. Australia weren't great in this tournament, frankly. Um, realistically, I think on form, England would have beaten them in that match that was washed out, and we wouldn't have to worry about net run rate. It'd just be Australia didn't make it on merit. It's just a bit of a lackluster home tournament for the defending champs. New Zealand look very, very good, and England have gotten better as the tournament's gotten on. They're the top of that batting order is amazing. Both of these sides have got incredible bowling attacks. So, you know, I think both of them are obviously worthy semi-finalists, but it's not like either of them are weak either. Both of these sides, if they go through the final, could well win it.
Yeah, and I was honestly surprised a little bit that England were able to even beat New Zealand, and it wasn't exactly a super close match in that either, which just showed that England does have the potential on their days to do well, but we've seen New Zealand play out of their minds a couple of times. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you. Top 3 I expected, bottom 3 I expected, just a little bit of different ordering around in those. But as far as Group 2 goes, excitement up to the last day, as we were mentioning a little bit ago. But India ultimately won the group: 4 wins, 1 loss, 8 points, finished first. Pakistan finished second with 6 points in their 5 matches. South Africa third with 5. Surprise of the entire tournament: the Netherlands, fourth place, 4 points. the automatic qualification to the Super 12 in 2 years' time. And they were tied on points with Bangladesh, who finished fifth based on that net run rate, as Netherlands were minus 0.849 and Bangladesh was minus 1.176. And then rounding out the group two at the bottom was Zimbabwe with 3 points. What is this kind of what you expect? Because I could be wrong, but for some reason I feel like you were going with India, South Africa to get out of this
Oh yeah,
group at
no,
the beginning
I
in our
absolutely
preview.
was.
And I think I
Yeah,
had a
no,
feeling that it would be one of those two of Pakistan, South Africa, but
yeah, no, I went with India and South Africa. I think from memory, I picked South Africa to finish top of the group simply because I wasn't sure how India would cope with those bowling absences. So,
yeah,
I mentioned Arshdeep Singh ad nauseum. I'm massively impressed. He's taken up the mantle from Boomer, and India have gone on like nothing's wrong. South Africa will sit there in third place and lament the fact that the only match in this group that was washed out was the one between them and the bottom of the table Zimbabweans. But having said that, they can sit there and say, oh, that would have given us an extra point and probably the extra run rate. We would have gone through. But all you had to do was beat the bloody Dutch. Like, even with that washout, you still had it in your own hands, South Africa.
yeah,
So I will hear no complaints from Springboks about that washout. Um, Bangladesh, are better than what a normal fifth side would be. 2 wins, 3 losses, a couple of tight ones as well. So they had a reasonable tournament that probably doesn't get reflected in the fact that they finished second to last in the group. The Zimbabweans have got a really nice future if they can find a few extra batsmen to come through, because that bowling attack, it's young, and it's very impressive. I think there's a lot of growth left in the Zimbabwean side. And again, kudos to the darlings of the tournament, the Cinderella story, the Netherlands. Um, yeah, just a fantastic tournament for them. 2 wins, they will be automatic qualifiers next time around. Um, I do want to point out, when India and Pakistan, the first game in this group, Pakistan, it's one of the best matches I've ever seen. Pakistan had it won, absolutely had it won, and managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Typical Pakistani sides would have just like dropped their bundle, and they might have come away with 1 win at the end when there was nothing to play for. But credit to this Pakistani side that they've gotten through what would have been a devastating loss to their biggest and most bitterest rival, and they've come through and snuck in. Yes, it took the South Africans to choke, but ultimately they've gotten the job done. They could have choked themselves against Bangladesh, knowing what was on the line, but they didn't. They played superbly. So this seems to be a new mindset for Pakistani cricket. There's a new resilience there that traditionally isn't there for the Pakistani. So good on them.
yeah. And don't forget that Pakistan also lost their second match against Zimbabwe by 1 run. So
Very good point.
they started out 0-2, and it looked like they were more or less done for in this entire tournament, and absolutely turned it around, getting big wins against South Africa, especially, and then Zimbabwe, or then the Netherlands and the Bangladesh. But props to them
Yeah,
for
very good
fighting
point.
back through very, very much a difficult situation and a very bad, rough start, because both of those matches went down to the last ball or two and
Yeah.
could have really just set their momentum so low that we would be talking about South Africa comfortably getting through this group, but wasn't to be. So semifinals, it's the top team of group one against the second place team in group two on Wednesday night, your time, Wednesday morning in the US, the New Zealand and Pakistan. What are your thoughts on that one?
Um, I honestly think I think New Zealand will take this one. They're just in such good form. Yes, Pakistan can beat anyone on their day, but this New Zealand lineup is just so explosive. Their top five bats have all been in form. Jimmy Neesham, who comes in at 6, hasn't gotten going, and he's the sort of guy that can take an innings away from a bowling side if he gets going. So he's due for one of those, 50 off 25s that he regularly does in the IPL. Um, at the same time, when Pakistan are batting, they've got a good batting lineup. It's explosive. It's enigmatic as all hell. But the New Zealand bowling attack is one of the best in the tournament, and they were particularly the quicks. Those three awesome quicks, Bolt, Southey, and Ferguson. They were poor against England, and I think they will really bounce back against Pakistan. They will be ready to and raring to go. I think New Zealand will come through and make the final.
Yeah, I agree with you. You've kind of covered all the big points for New Zealand, and Pakistan's a team that has great days and very bad days. And I have a feeling with the skill and talent of this New Zealand bowling attack, especially, it could be one of those rough days for Pakistan. And I see the Kiwis making it to their second straight World Cup final.
I actually think this won't be a Pakistani capitulation. I actually think this will be a really good match. It's just that New
Okay.
Zealand are a class above. I've yeah, the way Pakistan have negotiated their way through an awful start has been very, very impressive. So I think they'll play well, but I think New Zealand is better.
Yeah, I agree. But knowing our predictions so far this tournament, Pakistan's a shoe in now. But no,
Yeah, the
you
kiss
know,
of death.
absolutely. But then we'll hop into the other one, which two of the favorites of the tournament coming in, and this could have been a match we saw in the final. England and India, Thursday morning in the US. And that'll be able on ESPN Plus, as will the New Zealand Pakistan match, and Thursday night in Australia. But two of the big dogs in this tournament going
Yeah,
head to head. This should be a fun match.
yeah. This is a flip of the coin for me, Jerry. I really, I got to admit, I'm leaning towards India. The fact it's in Adelaide gives me a little bit of pause, a little bit of concern for the Indian case, though. If this match was in Sydney or in Melbourne or even in Brisbane, oh, probably not Brisbane. If it was in Sydney or Melbourne, I'd say India in a heartbeat. India play the southeast corner of Australia very well, and the MCG is basically the most like it's India's home away from home. They don't get support anywhere around the world outside of India like they do at the MCG. There's a massive Indian population in Melbourne, and they all come out and they're loud. When we saw it in
And
their match tonight, that was at the MCG, and it was 88,000 people
yeah,
for a game that doesn't include Australia, and I can guarantee 90% of that crowd was. Um, I'm, geez, I'm not confident in this selection, but I'm going to say India will beat England.
okay.
But I got to admit, I almost don't even care who wins because I just think this is going to be a remarkable cricket match. But I have to make a tip. I'll lean towards India to make it through to the final.
All right. I'm kind of in the same boat. I think it's a coin flip as much as I hope England gets through. I see India just I can see this being another Virat Kohli masterpiece, and he finds a way to get past this tough English bowling side. And one thing that I've just found out or like noticed was India have played one match at Adelaide this tournament,
Yeah,
and they beat Bangladesh quite comfortably, whereas England
yeah.
have yet to play in Adelaide. So I don't know if that'll be in play any role in it or have any impact, but just something I'm
Adelaide
interested
can
in.
swing.
Could be curious.
Yeah, the Adelaide Oval, you can swing that ball a fair bit. It can be quite, it can be closer to English conditions than a lot of other places in Australia. Um, but it's a 20 over match. It's not like the pitch will disintegrate in the same way that it normally will, which is much like an English pitch.
Mm.
Yeah, look, it is a coin flip. I'll go for India. You mentioned Virat Kohli. You're expecting another masterpiece from him. Australians have said for years and years and years of because Shane Warne, the late Shane Warne, was the second greatest wicket taker in cricket history. It's all like Australians often sit there and say, well, if Warne had played in the subcontinent where the spinning wickets, dusty wickets, he could have taken 800 or 900 Test wickets.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I reckon if Virat Kohli was Australian, I've never seen a visiting batsman play Australian conditions as well as Virat Kohli. If he was Aussie and he played his entire career as an Australian, all of those home tests that you get, he could legitimately average 65 in Test cricket. He's a remarkable batsman anywhere in the world, but you put him on Australian conditions and he grows a leg. He's just magnificent in this country. He's almost you almost can't bowl to him. He will find any fault with what you're doing as a bowler, and he'll dispatch you. Any type of bowling, any type of pitch, and Australia has a lot of disparate types of pitches. I honestly think if he was Australian, we could be talking about one of the greatest, like a top 3 or 4 batsmen all time.
Yeah.
But as it is, we're still talking about a guy who might be in the top 15 or 20 all time.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a great player for India, but as you mentioned, if he was Australian, who knows what he could have done with the bat, considering how well he plays those conditions. But there it is. We both predicted New Zealand and India to make it to the final. Now, the million dollar
I'm
question.
disappointed, Jerry. I'm disappointed you haven't tipped England.
I, I haven't been picking England so far this tournament, at least the last couple big matches. I'm hoping it just rides the same wave, but it's
Reverse it,
I
reverse
also
jinx it.
yeah, I also do think that India will find a way to get it done. As good as England's top part of their batting has been, the last couple of matches, the rest of that lineup has not been very good. And I'm a little concerned about that and feel like if Arshdeep Singh comes
Yeah.
out early and gets a quick wicket of any of Butler, Stokes if he's up at the top, or Hales, it's going to be a very long match for England. But million dollar question: who wins, India or New Zealand?
Look, if India were full strength, I would have tipped them at the start of the tournament. As it is, they've handled the absences of key players really, really well. And the final is at the MCG, which is, arguably India's favourite ground outside of their own country. So all of those things to me say that it will be an Indian World Cup victory, assuming it's India and New Zealand who get through. The England's, it's a coin flip match. We might be seeing England there, which will turn all of the predictions on its head. But if our semi-final predictions go as we expect, then I think India will take the final.
I do as well. I want to go with New Zealand a little bit, considering they lost in the final last year and they have looked very good. But the fact that it's at the MCG where India's played at least 2 matches so far, they will have that home crowd support because no, the Aussies don't want to see New Zealand win it on their home turf, I would think. And it
We'd,
would,
we'd rather see New Zealand win it than England, I can tell you
yeah,
that
I can believe that. But, but no, I think India will get it done and get the World Cup win. But that's all from us. Super 12 is done. On to the semifinals. Thank you guys for watching as always. You reach out to both of us on Twitter. Reach out to Jarrod at hey_it's_JP. Reach out to me at JerryF007. Let us know your World Cup semifinal and final predictions because we want to hear them. We want to see if you guys think we're crazy thinking it's both New Zealand and India. Pakistan going to get through or England going to get through? Let us know. And check out all of our other stuff on Vendetta. Jarrod's done a great job with the NBA coverage. NBA season's been in full swing now. It's a lot of drama going down as always in the #1 basketball league in the world. But check out all that stuff. You subscribe to our YouTube channel, look at our Twitter, our website. Check out all the Vendetta Media stuff because it's not just us doing stuff. We have a whole team of people covering everything from WWE to MLB now that the World Series is done, NFL, NHL, do a lot of soccer as well. And we kind of just try and cover a little bit of everything. And it's not just sports. We have some stuff outside, but check out all of our stuff. Thank you guys for watching and have a good one.